Yeah, so a really high level, man, and it was really powerful right here because we just cover like we want to start with our why. When we get started in any new venture and building any new skill set, we want to make sure that we, really trigger that motor. And it starts with why are we doing this? What's the purpose behind it? So that we can be able to make sure that we get to the finish line. So we just covered a lot of information on why people get into stock options. This way we can use that as a foundation when we get started and we start learning how to trade and learn how to, work in this application. So with this outline, so this week here, we're really gonna be focusing on the trading rules and risk management. Next week is going to be about finding different stocks. There's going to be a variety of different types of stocks that you can invest in and trade. We just want to make sure that we can be able to perform the right due diligence in terms of having that visual on what to look for, what not to look for, and different indicators that we can use. And week 3, we're going to focus on how to buy and sell stock options. That's really getting into the nitty gritty on the technical side on what are the steps that you can actually take to start buying stock options and how to execute on certain trades. And on week 4, we're going to cover different indicators, more tools, and different strategies that we can use to help really build up the portfolio, and that we can really start generating that income that we set ourselves out for. So once we lay out that foundation, have that understanding, we can start taking off in that direction there. So trading rules, we want to start talking about different ways that we can make sure that when we're starting to trade, what are some techniques, some skills that we can work with, and how we can start paper trading first. So what are some ways that we can start to implement certain strategies and aspects to help with creating different ways to be able to live by when we come to stock options and trading. All right. Next part is really knowing how to manage ourselves when we're in the activity of trading. A lot of times you may want to you see things not going your way and how to respond to those situations. So if you're trading and you're noticing that things may be ticking, but how can you really stick to your position based off of the strategy that you're using? So when it comes to stock option, you have to be able to control your emotions and your fears based off of the signals you're getting, the information that you're noticing in the market, and how you're responding to it. So we want to make sure we can recognize all of that so that when we're ready to execute or perform or we're managing our portfolio, that we are aware of how we are feeling in that moment, and we're not necessarily acting off of that emotion. We're actually acting off of something important, an important indicator that we notice, so we can trade accordingly and not just based off of a certain hype that may be happening at that time. So we just want to make sure they're aware of this when we start trading. And also greed. So sometimes when your appetite gets stimulated, we just want to do more and more and more, and then next thing you know, we exposed ourselves to a lot of risk. So we just want to make sure we're aware of different ways how we can kind of control our impulses, control ways, because again, this is an active investment strategy, and it comes with risk. We just want to be able to make sure we can manage that risk appropriately by following certain rules, but then also being able to really control our emotions, mitigate our greed in a way that we're just not acting off of impulse, and we're acting off of the information that we have based off of what we're scanning in the market. So when we start trading, we want to be conscious of what do we have to work with? What are the resources, in terms of setting a certain amount aside that you're willing to put at risk? So just noting this stuff down. So we want to make sure we trade only with expendable money that we're willing to put up the risk, because as we learn this skill set, we want to make sure that as we're learning, we're not risking our savings, right? So if you got that emergency fund that you've been setting aside, it could be for something that may happen, or if it's your kid's college savings fund, let's not trade with that. Let's trade with something that we can actually put at risk and that we can use. Because if you're down to your last dollar and you put that on a stock option, that's not something we want to work with there. So this is just a rule of thumb. We want to trade up to 5% of what your balance is. So, and it can also be different for new traders. That way that we can at least have a benchmark that we can use on how we're trading on our platform here. So when we get started, we want to make sure we can actually get a lay of the land. And the way we do that is by taking a small position first, right? So instead of taking a huge risk on an investment that we're not too aware about, we just want to make sure we can manage our expectations based off of the position that we take, and just so we can get just really just getting used to it, getting comfortable, getting that experience, building it up. And then once we start to see us leveling up and being able to be more proficient at it, then we can start taking a bigger position. But when we're just starting out, let's just start taking a small position as we're testing it out and seeing what works, what doesn't work, because you'll start to realize, again, going back to it, how you respond to certain things based off of information and what works best for you. The next part is we're like obtaining, really the type of confirmations on a particular execution before you start taking a position. So when you're getting ready to get started, we're looking at 4 out of 5, get those type of confirmations that you may want to be aware of before you decide on positioning, right? So these are just things to take a note of on how can I best position myself for success when starting in the world of stock options. And once we get that foundation laid out, and we'll be ready to go to start executing on trades that we are aware of, the different risks that we may be coming across, and how we can be able to mitigate any unforeseen events that may potentially negatively impact our situation. So what we do suggest is just mastering one stock at first. Once you get one stock down, you really understand how it works, you gotta under your belt and you're comfortable with the process, that's a way that we can really start having more confidence and on being able to execute trades and be able to get started. So those are some few things to live by, and we're only going to trade companies with a catalyst. And when we say a catalyst, it's something like an event that's going to take place that's going to change that company's value. Because we can go deep and dive into how stock valuations work and everything, but if you see something that maybe I'm gonna just use an example of a company like Microsoft, they're about to release a new product, and you see oh, this could potentially change the value of this company's stock. That's something that you can think about, and once you recognize how this company is performing, and you notice those catalysts, that's something that you want to be aware of, and have basically a library of catalysts of events that could potentially impact the way that stock would trade. So that's something just to be mindful of and to work by. And as you work with one stock and you build up your repertoire on how this process works, you become more of a confident trader. All right, Mick, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, that mastering one stock, I think that's super important. So many times people just want to bounce around all over the place. Stay with one stock in the beginning, definitely. And do something small, SPY, QQQ, and there's some others. You could figure out what best suits you, but stick with one stock so that you could get a hang of it. I kind of use it like an example of saying it's like dating. And if you was dating multiple men or multiple women all at the same time, you can never really know their behaviors or what they like or what they dislike, their mood swings and things of that nature. And guess what? Stocks have mood swings too. So if you stick with that one stock, you're capable of learning it. You know it's good days, it's bad days. So that's super important.